Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a review slash comparison of two watches that are absolute heavyweights in the sports watch world. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Wow, I gotta say that 5 times fast. But each one of these things is a legend. I'm talking the Rolex Submariner and the Omega Seamaster. They both have a devout following, many years of history, and James Bond, our international hero and mystery man, has worn them both in the movies. So without further ado, I'm excited to bring this to you. I've owned both of these watches personally. I've had a lot of experience with them both, and hopefully you'll enjoy the review that follows. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now before we get started, I am wearing one of the watches from this video review. That's the Omega Seamaster Professional. There's plenty of videos and of this very watch, on my channel, and photos on Instagram as well. But with all that said, let's go ahead and jump in the video. All right guys, let's go ahead and get this thing started. So I'm excited to do this video. I've known both of these watches for a long time, and to be able to put them together on film and share them with you guys is going to be kind of fun for me. Both of these watches are absolute legends in the divers world and in the sports watch world. If you're watching this video, I would be stunned to find out if you didn't know what either one of these watches were, and I would be willing to bet most of you guys watching are very familiar with both of these watches. Both of these watches are, like I said, absolute icons. They have a very storied past. Both of them have had famous and both infamous owners. They've been referenced in multiple movies and pop references, and they have such a devout following that there are no shortage of online communities, forums, videos dedicated to each of them, and their owners tend to be very passionate and vocal. You know, having a particular interest in one or the other, these watches almost have like a religious following. They're very much a group of people that are extremely loyal to their Submariners, and there's a group that are extremely loyal to their Omega dive watches, especially the Seamaster. I've been privileged to own them both in my lifetime, and I like them both for different reasons, but they both have a very strong following, and they both have a very different personality. Now, before we get started and actually examine them in depth, I just want to point out a couple things. One, when I do show you the Seamaster, bear in mind this is a 1999 model. There is some fade going on with it, so the coloration is a little different than it would have been. Also, on the Submariner, I am borrowing this. This is not my personal watch. However, I did own a Submariner for over 5 years. I had a 16610, which would have been the perfect mate for this review since it's the stainless version. However, for today's review, I'm going to be comparing it to a 16613, which, as you can see here, is the 18 karat two-tone version. So, two-tone aside, though, these two watches stack up really well. So just ignore the fact that this has gold on it, as it has absolutely no relativity to the function of the watch or its use as a dive watch. So with all that said, guys, that's enough intro for us. Let's go ahead and just get started. And to go and get started, let's go ahead and pick up the Seamaster. Alright, so this is the watch that's been on my channel more times than I can count, and I'm sure you guys are probably sick of seeing it and hearing the story about why it's special to me. For those of you who are new to the channel, the short version of it is, as a kid born in the late 80s who was, coming to maturity in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, Pierce Brosnan was Bond at the time, and this was the Bond watch, and so this watch has always been special to me. This is the watch that James Bond wore. So, a particular example you see here is actually right out of the Bond era. This is a 1999 model or early 2000 based on the serial number. Now, this watch was first introduced by Omega in the early 90s, and Bond first wore it in GoldenEye and Quartz iteration, which was about 1995. Later movies, including Tomorrow Never Dies, Die Another Day, and World Is Not Enough, he went to this version. This is the Seamaster Professional, which you can see Professional right below Seamaster on the dial. Professional dictates that this is the automatic version of the watch, not the Quartz. So first things first, what we're looking at here is a stainless steel case, and this is 316L stainless steel fold over bracelet, which I'll come to in a second. A lot of people always wonder what this thing off here at 10 o'clock does. And as I joke in all my videos on this watch, it does not activate landmines or a laser. It is just a screw unscrew bit, and what it actually does is it allows helium to escape. I'll let my friends that do saturation diving explain in the comments why that might be relevant to them. In short, though, for the way most people are going to use this watch, a helium escape valve is not really a needed accessory. It's kind of more a bit of playfulness, I think, on Omega's part for putting it there. But it's kind of cool, and it's one of those things about this watch that tends to polarize people in a love it or hate it kind of fashion. I love this, but to me, that's what Bond used to activate his gadgets, so I have a bias. One of the other things too about this is you're going to notice there's like a coin-edged bezel. This is actually one of my least favorite attributes of this watch. It is a very pretty, I think, looking bezel, and with a blue inner ring, I think it has a nice look to it, but in activation, it's extremely difficult to rotate. Once you get it going, you'll see it picks up, but to first kind of nudge it while it's at rest, it is a massive pain on my example, and I've held quite a few of these and most of them have been very difficult to turn. As I've mentioned in all of my videos on dive watches, this one being no different, you line this dot up with the minute hand as I've just done here, and as the minute hand keeps sweeping around, you can keep track of elapsed time from the time you've actually set it. So for divers, that's important because obviously you can keep track of your time, excuse me, you can obviously keep track of your time underwater, or your oxygen, how much oxygen you have remaining, or for those of us that just live in corporate America or just daily jobs, we can time whatever events we want to. It is actually quite useful for that kind of thing. So it actually can be kind of useful just for timing random events in life. If we're forgetful of seeing what time it was when we started something, you can always set this as a friendly reminder. It is unidirectional, 120 clicks. So you can always add time. You see, by rotating it, you could always make it look like you've been timing something longer, but you can't subtract time. And that's a safety feature. Dive watches, when they first came out, were bi-directional, i.e. they could go both directions. But in that case, you risk accidentally subtracting time, which would be harmful if you're tracking something like oxygen, for example, underwater. But that's what that's for. Now, this Omega, as I mentioned, is from the late 90s, early 2000s. And this is back in the day when they still had the C-Wave dial. You can see as I rotate it around like this, you can actually pick up, there's actually a texture on the dial. And it is really cool. It's a C-Wave pattern. It is one of my favorite attributes of this watch and something that Omega has gotten away from. All the ones that I'm aware of they're currently manufacturing at the time of this video are flat dials. And I am definitely one of those that much prefers this C-Wave motif. This is also before Omega went to applied markers. At some point in the future, I'm going to compare this against the newer quartz version that actually has the flat dial on it, and we can kind of do a little bit of a comparison for you guys to see the difference. The newer one also has the applied markers versus just these luminous dots. Speaking of lume, I will go ahead and include a photo here, so you can see how this watch glows in the dark. As you can see, despite the age of this watch, it still glows rather impressively. So moving on, so again, they have a nice clear dial. The color of the dial and that wave dial contrasted with the print and the markers, I think is a very refreshing look. The second hand that's going around here is almost a burnt orange color. Originally it would have been more of a solid red, but mine being an older example, it has definitely seen some aging going on. Now, the crown is protected by these two rather thick crown guards, and it is screwed down as you would imagine. There's also, of course, the Omega logo on the crown, which I'll go ahead and unscrew here. The crown tube too, which you probably won't be able to see quite at this angle. When I pull it out, you will, is actually quite substantial looking. So I rotate it. First position is winding. Second position changes the date. And third position is hacking, and it will stop the movement. So speaking of the movement, what movement is actually in this watch, you're probably going to ask yourself. Well, this is back in the day when Omega was still using highly modified versions of ETA calibers. So this features an ETA modified 2892 movement. In Omega spec, it becomes the Cal 1120. Now, Omega did actually do quite a bit of modification to this movement. If you're curious in seeing this movement, I've actually done video of it, and it's on my Instagram, which link is to below. I also have a full review on this watch on its own, and I also in that video take the case back off and examine the movement. Omega, besides doing some beautiful decoration with some gold accents to it and swapping the rotor out, actually added 2 jewels to the movement and made it to chronometer specs. They actually did a very nice job of finishing it. They did some anti-magnetic treatments as well, and all in all, they did quite a nice job at taking a basic ETA caliber, which is good enough on its own in a lot of respects, and making it something special. And as always, guys, I prefer in-house. And when we talk about the Rolex, I won't mince words. I think the Rolex movement is superior to the Omega. However, they both beat at 28,800 beats per hour, and so that's going to give you that beautiful smooth sweep of the second hand. And both are hacking, both are hand winding as I'm winding it now, and both keep chronometer spec time. So spec for spec, they are very similar. The only noticeable spec difference the Omega loses to the Rolex is that the Omega is only 23 joules, whereas the Rolex, as I'll explain when we look at that watch in depth, is 31 joules. Beyond that, this watch, from being from the 90s, has actually got some really good build quality going on for it. The bracelet is decently fluid. And back in the day too, when this class first came out, this class was a revolution. So it's beautifully machined, and I want you to look at this closely, because when we look at the Rolex, which is actually about a year or two newer than this watch, I think you'll notice quite a bit of difference in quality. Very well machined. Back here, you have a nice little diving extension, and the milling and the machining on this whole clasp bit is very well done. It's a little dated by today's specs, but at the time this watch came out, this was an exceptional bracelet and clasp system that they had going on here. And also the case back itself, as you'll see there, it's beautiful. It has a Seamaster seahorse. You have the little Omega logo down here, and again that beautiful repeated wave dial has been repeated on the back as well, so that wave motif carries over on both sides, and just the machining and the quality of it is very well done. And this watch too is very slim, and on the wrist it's very slim, and it easily accommodates a dress cuff. So in all, that's the Omega Seamaster. One other thing too, two really things I don't like about this, just while we're on it though, there's no fine adjustment, which you'll see on the Rolex has, so you cannot finely adjust the clasp and the bracelet length, so as your wrist swells, with weather changes, you can't do any fine adjustments, which is annoying. And also this bracelet, unlike the Rolex, which I'll show you in a sec, just uses push pins other than, doesn't have screw out links, which is something that would have been nice to have. But otherwise, the Omega is a solid watch. It's a great watch and a highly recommended watch. So with all that said, let's go ahead and look at the Rolex Submariner. All right guys, here's the icon of the Rolex lineup, the Rolex Submariner. When people think of Rolex, if they're not thinking of a Datejester or president, they're thinking of a sub. This watch is an icon. As I mentioned on the Seamaster portion of this video, James Bond wore a Seamaster. What some people may not remember is that James Bond actually wore a Submariner as well. James Bond wore a no-date sub back in the 60s, what many people consider the true Bond. Sean Connery wore the sub, and Roger Moore even had it in one video too, if I remember. I'm sure you guys will feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also an icon of the Bond world, and this example is from 2001. Now, I always have people ask me on these videos when I talk about these older Rolexes, there's no Rolex going around the inner rehaut, and a lot of people are like, oh, it must be a fake because it's not there. Just to point out, because I know somebody's going to ask me, Rolex didn't start doing that until later in the 2000s. So this watch, being an 01, is before Rolex did that inner Rolex treatment. Now, speaking of the dial itself, the crystal on this watch is sapphire. I did not point out on the Seamaster portion, but the Seamaster is also sapphire. And of course, here's the iconic Rolex Cyclops, which if I tilt the watch, you might be able to see that the date is significantly smaller. The Cyclops is a magnification of about 2.5 times. One thing that's annoying about the Cyclops, and you may be able to see it on this portion, is it picks up like oil and dirt all the way around the perimeter of it. And it's like no matter how much you wipe away that dirt, it just shows terribly and you can't get it off. And actually there's like a dot here too. The crystals on Rolexes, and I don't know what it is, every Rolex I've owned and the two that I currently own, they all pick up dirt and fingerprints and oil on the sapphire, and it's like you clean it and every 5 seconds you get dirt back on it. Rolex, please introduce an AR coating on your sapphires or something, because your crystals get so dirty. It's very distracting for OCD people like me. But the watch is gorgeous. This is a very iconic shape. Like the Seamaster, you also have a 120 click bezel. Unlike the Seamaster though, this one actually works well. It's very easy to turn. It feels very precise. And this has more of a more defined coin edge going on. And it just turns with a much better precision than the Seamaster does. And it also it locks in place really well, and it's just a lot more user friendly. Like the Seamaster, it only goes one way, i.e. unidirectional, so you just line it up right here with the minute hand, and of course, like the Seamaster, it'll keep track of elapsed time. Now, the bezel on this watch is actually 18 karat gold. One difference, but as I said, I really wish I would have had a 16610 version of this watch to compare, the stainless, all stainless version. As I said, I did own one for 5 years. It's actually on the channel in some of my older videos, but I do not recommend you watch those videos because they're not that good. These beautiful luminous markers, this is after Rolex switched away from tritium. Let me go ahead and roll in a photo here so you guys can see how well this watch still glows after about 16 years of service. So as you can see, it still looks really good for how old the watch is. It's still glowing well. I will say though, the Seamaster I do think glows a little bit better. Coming back to the watch, in this case you have this beautiful printing from Rolex. Rolex printing is always beyond crisp. It is just so well done. And I like the gold against the black fitting with the watch. It of course says Submariner 1000 feet. Both of these watches are good to 1000 feet, 330 meters. This one also mentions superlative chronometer. officially certified. That's because this watch is a certified chronometer, just like the Omega. That just means it's certified to keep chronometer spec time. And you can look those specs up online if you're curious about that. Like the Omega, you have these crown guards, although on the Rolex, I like these crown guards a lot better. They're much thinner. The crown actually on the Submariner is quite a bit larger too. And it's a screw down, uses Rolex's trip lock system. There's 3 dots here telling you that because there's 3 seals actually keeping the water out. So you unscrew it and you can actually, when I pull this out a little bit, there's actually a black seal here as well. First position, there it is. There's a black seal right there. First position and winding. This movement turns so well. The Rolex movements, especially 31, 35, they feel very refined when you're manipulating them. So first position is winding, second position, you can go ahead and change the date. And third position, like our friend the Omega, is also hacking. So you can go ahead and change the time. Now, this uses an all in-house movement in contrast to the Omega. This is the Rolex 3135 architecture. This movement is bulletproof. I would say Rolex makes the most rugged sports watches on the face of the planet. Rolexes take a beating and they keep running really, really well. 31 jewel, so you have a higher jewel count than the Seamaster. Again, this one is all in-house, 28,800 beats, just like the Seamaster. So you have that beautiful smooth sweep, and it's just a very rugged movement. Rolex, unlike Omega, isn't proud of their movements for reasons I don't understand. They always use these blank case backs. I would love to see a see-through case back. So, in the Omega, we saw that nice engraved seahorse motif with the waves. Here you just get a blank case back. At one point, there would have been a holographic green sticker there many, many years ago. Speaking of the case back and the bracelet itself, since we're in view of it, you're going to notice a substantial difference on the bracelet compared to the Seamaster. So this is a flip over, but unlike that beautifully machined clasp we saw on the Seamaster, you just see this cheap fold over stamped clasp. And it says Rolex on it. This is from an era of Rolex where all these watches had this kind of a bracelet on them with this kind of a fold over clasp. New subs have obviously rectified this and they've gone a long way. They have the glide lock system for on the fly adjustments. I mean, they're leaps and bounds better than this watch. But at the time, as you guys could see as I was comparing this to the Omega here, the Omega hands down has a much better clasp going on than the Rolex does. So now the Omega also, as I mentioned, had a diver's extension. Well, so does the Rolex. I gotta pop my fat fingers in here just a sec. There we go. So the Rolex does have a diver's extension with some grit on it, has to be cleaned off. So this too can be used over a wetsuit. That again is to give you some extra length on the bracelet. You activate it, and I don't know if I'll pick it up. There's a little dot here. You just press against it, comes right out. So, it is a dive watch just like the Omega. Now, this one being a gold one, I'd be less inclined to go dive in it, but hey, it does have a fine adjustment, which is something I complained about on the Omega. So you can take up some slack on the bracelet by adjusting it here. So as your wrist size swells and decreases with moisture changes, this thing can always be adjusted quickly to fit your wrist better without removing links. And those links too, unlike the Seamaster, actually have screw out links, which is very convenient. Now, this is back in the day. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. The center links on this Rolex are actually hollow. So these are solid 18 karat gold center links, but they actually are hollow in the center of it. Rolex went to solid links after this watch was manufactured. This also was back in the day when Rolex still had a holes case, as they call it. So these things are really easy to remove the bracelet. You just pop a tool in here and the bracelet comes off. I prefer holes cases and I miss Rolex doing this, but that's what they've done. You go ahead and fold this back over. Profile wise, this is definitely a thicker, heavier case than the Seamaster. The bottom of this, the movement protrudes a little bit more too. Even in comparison to my Rolex GMT Master and Explorer 2, this is noticeably a chunkier case. And on the wrist, this is definitely something you could still wear with dress cuffs, but it is a little bit bulkier than the Omega would be. But there you can see it does flow nicely, and the lugs do start to curve over into your wrist. It does wear pretty comfortable on the wrist. As you can see, that crown is actually pretty chunky too. I wear my watches on my right wrist. I know people that wear it on their left have complained about the crown digging into their wrist, but to me it's not a problem. So there you go, guys. There's kind of a high-level overview of the sub. Full review of this is on my channel, as is a full review of the Seamaster. So as I mentioned, I've owned both of these watches. I adore both of these watches.
As I said, I had the Submariner, only mine was a solid stainless steel version. Between the two, which one is my favorite? Personally, the Omega is my favorite. I just, I think because of the bond of my generation, I'm sure it's more of an emotional tangibility. The Omega has a better bracelet on it. I think the dial on the Omega is better. I like the sapphire on the Omega better. It doesn't show prints and marks and oil the way that the Rolex does. That said, the Rolex has, in my mind, a very superior movement to the Omega. It has a much better bezel than the Omega. And overall, the Submariner is always going to have, that bit of being in style, being collectible, and I would imagine in the long term is always going to be worth substantially more money than the Omega. But either way, guys, they're both icons for a reason. They're both fantastic watches, and if you're considering either one of these, I don't think you could go wrong either way. I would recommend them both a lot. I love them both dearly, and having owned both, I would happily own another Submariner too. At this point, though, I have all my Seiko dive watches, and I have this dive watch, and I'm not really feeling like my collection's lacking one, but who knows, one day I may add another sub back to my collection. But both icons, and with all that said, I've talked a lot. Let's go ahead and just jump back.
Welcome back. I really hope you enjoyed that and got some information out of it you wouldn't have found otherwise. As I've said, I know these watches pretty intimately, so hopefully you learned some things you may not have seen otherwise. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and let me know what you guys think below in the comments. Is there one that you prefer over the other, or how do you feel about them, or do you dislike them both? I'm curious what you guys think. And as always, I appreciate your commentary. I get a chance to respond to all the comments, but I very much appreciate them, and I love how we get to foster this sense of community and share with each other and comment on each other's comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, please peruse my channel. I can almost promise you there's probably videos on there that would be of interest to you, and a lot of the questions that I get asked I've actually already done videos on. Speaking of, if you want to catch my next video somewhere around in this general periphery, I'll put a link to subscribe to my channel, which I appreciate a lot. Thank you guys so much for the support. As always, there's nothing I can say other than I'm so grateful, and I can't express more than that. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Hope you're well. Take care.